Hi, everybody. We will give a few minutes for everybody to join. Very excited for this conversation. How are you, James, today?
Very well, thanks, Stuart. Feeling good, ready for this conversation. A very exciting one, might I add. Might I add? How are you?
Yeah, great. Yeah, likewise. Really excited to talk through this, and I can see a bunch of people joining. So we'll just give another 30 seconds or so, and then we can get started. Awesome.
How long until we move to the acronym MPM? Just MPM, no longer marketing per marketer, because it's just so familiar with everybody in the space.
I think
A little while, yeah.
in the next month or two, it will
Month
just
or
be
two.
the thing. So let's yeah, let's give everybody the view of it. So I
Yeah,
think we
great.
can get started. So look, firstly, thank you everybody for joining, and we are super excited to be talking about marketing per marketer. And I'm joined by my other co-founder, James Ford. We're based in London, and we're really excited to give you a bit of a view into what we've been obsessing over the last 12 months or so, both from a customer standpoint, how do we become more informed for our own customers, but also where the market is moving to. And I think the context is that this conversation is heavily informed by some of the shifts that we're seeing year on year now, from when AI became readily available to every user to now every business, and seeing what impact it is having. And I guess the goal of the conversation today is that we want to give everybody that's joined the understanding of how you can quantify your marketing velocity and also the marketing quality. And not only for your own business, but across your competitors that you're facing in the market. And one of the promises for everybody on this call today is that where our marketing per marketer reports typically come with a cost, everybody will get access to one if you tell us the competitors that you want analyzed as part of this. So that's me giving you a quick view into what you're going to get by the end of this conversation. And we're super excited that you are part of it with us. So I think the initial context is what is happening in the world of marketing and content production. And as we're in January, February, start of the year, I think it's important that we open up and just say what actually went on in 2025. And you won't be surprised to know that one of the big shifts that we analyzed and we saw, and a bunch of other businesses and research businesses have commented on, is that there is now more content than ever before. And I don't know if you've got the same feeling. Let's just take LinkedIn's feed, for example. It is just constant. The sheer velocity of content, whether it's coming from an individual, whether it's coming from a business, whether it's an article, whether it's a video, whether it's an image, it has just gone kind of off the charts. And I think what we've also seen is that the velocity of AI generated content, you know, those GPT images that people are still using to like come up with a headline or an overview of something, you're seeing that, you're seeing just the sheer velocity going up. And interestingly, not only on imagery, but also the leverage of AI video is becoming more and more prominent as businesses become more familiar with the tools that are available, and ultimately that the language models are becoming stronger and stronger, which means that actually differentiating between either is perhaps more difficult than what it ever has been before. And what we were looking at was some of the analysis which kind of validates this. And Tenfold is a large PR agency. They surveyed 400 senior marketing execs in August of last year. And almost 50% of those marketing execs, this is B2B, are producing 3 to 5x more content than in 2024. And if you think about what's gone on from 23, 24, 25, is actually most teams have had headcount reduced. So the fact that you're seeing this increase in content production is kind of really interesting with some of the shifts that are going on in teams. Now, this really stood out because let's just take the example that I said there, where team size is being cut or maybe businesses are struggling. 0% of those B2B execs have reduced their content production by more than 10%, even if their team size is being cut. Now, James, when you see this, kind of what goes through your head is the way that businesses would be able to do that. Like zero have actually reduced their content by more than 10% year over year. What comes to you when you see that?
I think it's a byproduct of the period of time that we're in. I think, there's more opportunities to create content quickly than there ever has been before, and there's more pressure on teams to ultimately create content, generate engagement, and ultimately bring interest to the doors of their businesses. And I think, marketers that are in seat absolutely know that. And so they've been left with little choice but to ramp up their content output. And so this type of statistic does not surprise me. And they've undoubtedly looked to the tools that are now present on the market to enable themselves to do that. And I think what's interesting is that has happened ever so quickly. It's happened, it's a transition that's happened in a very short space of time. Let's say, realistically, a year or 18 months, where really sophisticated tools have hit the market. And so now we're seeing that balance of, is it just content, or is it really content that's worth having and great content that delivers results? And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing some of the research that you've pulled in on in that regard, Stuart. Because I know you said that you found some really interesting pieces.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think it's kind of a good time to we're just going to trigger out a quick poll to ask those that are on live. Do you think last year we saw more content being produced by humans or by the machine? So it's going to be a quick poll. Put your answer in now, whether you think it has been superseded by the machine or you think the human is still producing more. We'll get to an answer in a moment. So, yeah, fill that in. Awesome. So, the final bit of research that I just want to touch upon was from Ahrefs, and they actually surveyed 879 marketers in H2 2025. And what they're seeing is the median now for article production is up by about 30% for those that are using AI. And it's around about 11 or 12 for those that aren't. And that's a mix of whether it's fully AI or in part AI. But again, you're just seeing that trend line that the volume and velocity of content across the board for the vast, vast majority of businesses is increasing. And it's a really important bit of context before we move on to some of the analysis. The research also then talked about the fact that out of 900,000 newly detected pages, AI generated articles were almost 40% of that content. So you're seeing that this huge volume of AI generated content, maybe exclusively, is coming through as well. And to answer the question that we raised in the poll, actually last year was the first year on record that AI generated content surpassed human generated content for the first time. So those of you that said the machine, well done. You were correct. For those that still believed in the human, it was close, but certainly you're seeing here that, this is analysis by Graphite that, GPT launched in November 2022. And all of a sudden you see that trend line of where the machine is increasing the production and the human is almost falling off a cliff.
I guess here's Stu. People may wonder what was the AI generated content being produced before the release of ChatGPT, and of course the OpenAI API was available a couple of years in advance, and so you saw huge business growth from businesses like Jasper that were enabling you to literally get a gateway through to that API and start creating posts for social media, start creating blogs for SEO purposes. But that explosion really happened when that ChatGPT interface was launched, and we see that spike exactly like you've got here on the graph, which is, yeah, makes you think.
Yeah. Wonder what it will be in the next 3 years. But look, the big question is, what about quality? Because what we know now is that it's easier than ever to produce content, right? And that's clear. The machine is producing more than ever before. But what about quality? And how do you comprehensively look at the content that you're producing and the marketing you're producing to be able to say that your quality is not dropping? Why this is so important is that there's not a huge amount of research on on this particular topic. But what we have seen is signals that platforms like LinkedIn are actually dropping your reach, they're decreasing your engagement, they're reducing your click through for AI generated content versus original content. So there's a sign or a signal that the platforms still want you to heavily invest in human led content rather
Right.
than AI generated content to ensure the quality is coming through. And I know a number of these platforms are also looking at ways that make tagging more accessible so that you can see the AI generated post or the AI generated research versus the human led post or the human led research, which I think is something that people will probably start seeing more of in the coming months. And what ultimately this also shows is that AI generated images got up to 70% fewer clicks when you look at your ad set on LinkedIn or anything like that. So there's a suggestion here that whilst we can produce more content, the implication on engagement and actual like clicks and posts and comments is severely impacted. And that was from 2024. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any more up to date research that comes out in the coming months. And this is where we want to introduce marketing per marketer and the analysis that we have been working on. We've got a team of analysts, but we've also been building our own research agents that allow us to comprehensively review any business in the world and their digital footprint and their online footprint to understand their MPM score, which is their marketing per marketer score. And we're going to talk you through this just to give you all a great insight into maybe some of the big shifts and the big, uh, I guess, metric that you should perhaps start bringing into your thinking, knowing that you can produce more content than ever before, but at what cost? Now, MPM is a series of calculated scores that immediately illustrate how much marketing progress is being achieved per head in your business across two critical components: quality and volume. What this allows us to do is analyze any business or any competitor of yours. And on the y axis, you can see the number of posts per marketer. So we're able to analyze how many posts are going out on places like LinkedIn. And then what is the engagement per marketer on the x axis? And the engagement per marketer is our way of understanding for every post or every asset being deployed, how much engagement is actually being driven for those posts. And crucially, when we look at the engagement and we actually pull that out of LinkedIn as an example, we remove your existing employees and any internal champions that you have that work in your business so that we don't skew the results, meaning that there's no point if you've got a competitor with 10,000 employees that always gets 300 likes to be compared against yours. And that's some of the way that we've tried to ensure that the engagement per marketer is as accurate as possible. James, is there anything you want to quickly talk about on the y-axis or the x-axis before we go into some of those descriptions that you can see across the board?
I think, look, I know we're going to dive into it in a lot more depth now, Stuart, but I think the thing that makes me so excited about this measurement, this metric, is yes, we get to see a snapshot of how we're competing against some competitors in our space right now. We get to see how much engagement are we being able to generate per unit of capacity, how much output are we being able to generate per unit of capacity per individual. But it's an amazing benchmark for ourselves because as these tools come onto the market and we can see right there in front of us that yes, we can create a lot more volume, we can take a snapshot here, understand how we're doing from a volume perspective, and then focus on how do we make that volume perform better. Let's check back in 3 months' time. And so it becomes a measuring stick, not just for right now, but for what our team is doing and how it's optimizing moving forward. And this graph evolves as you start to overlay 90 days on top of 90 days on top of 90 days to have a real look back of when the world is telling us that we need to do more with less. This is the proof that we're doing it.
Yeah, 100%. And why do you think it's important to be able to understand output per marketer and ultimately engagement per marketer? Like what do you think that's ultimately able to give you an understanding of whether you're a marketing leader or a commercial leader or the CEO or an investor? Like what do you think in very simple terms that gives you as an insight?
As a marketer, your job is ultimately to change the perception of the market, is to take an individual that believes that the status quo is fine and make them realize that, oh no, it's actually incredibly painful. And so each one of those marketers should really be, and I'm sure they are, developing stories, whether it's product marketing content, whether it's thought leadership, and they need to make sure that all of that work is seeing the light of day. It's being given the opportunity to be distributed to the far corners of their audience, and that's why volume is so important. We now live in a merit based society when it comes to social media. It's the quality of the post, it's the attractiveness of the story that will determine whether it does really well or not. Not how many page likes you currently have or how many followers you have on your account. The algorithms just want great content, and when they get it, they'll push it. And so, as a marketing team, it's your job to create as much good stuff as you possibly can across the resource that you have, get it out there, measure it, and find ways for it to be improved. And that's why the volume game, when you have a team of people, is so important.
Yeah, love it. And I think it's quite important just to note that the actual calculation's super simple. It's literally looking at a period, let's just say the last 90 days, and dividing that by the number of full-time marketers you have internally for the volume of posts per marketer. And then we take all of the likes and all the comments and do the exact same calculation when it comes to engagement. Now, people are probably looking at this going, what do each of these mean? James, firstly, if you could be anywhere in this graph, where would you want to be?
High impact producer, of course.
Of course.
I want to I
So
want to
so
be producing content. I want to be high volume, but I also want to make sure that every single one of those posts is gold as well, and it's getting the engagement. And ultimately, we get engagement, we get comments because it helps people, it gives people clarity, or it provokes people. It does those things that make people think, and that's where you want to be. You want to be up in that upper right hand quadrant, ideally.
and ultimately what this is saying is that you have got super high engagement, which is what you can see on the x-axis here. So this is really
Yeah.
high engagement, and your volume of posts per marketer is high as well. Now, obviously, in an ideal world, maybe the yellow would be right the way up in the top right hand corner. But typically, if you start increasing that volume of posts per marketer, then perhaps quality does drop. So that's where the high impact producers typically lands. Now, what about the low output stars? Because it looks here like this blue business is doing really well on engagement, but not quite as well on the volume. So, are they doing really badly, or how would you sum up the low output stars?
No, I think there's a lot to work with here. The low output stars are the individuals that every time they post, people flock to the post to give their engagement and give their support and give their comment. You could argue that actually their low frequency is part of their strength, right? And people are waiting for them to post, and maybe they are living front of mind. Now that is a very rare status for a business or an individual, so maybe not everybody has that. But what's really encouraging here is we know what works. How do we scale it without losing quality? How do we start to deliver this either over more posts, more channels, or you know, is this where the business wants to be? But generally, it says your content is good, but you've got an opportunity to do more of it and get more eyeballs, more reach, and bring your business into the periphery vision and focus of more of your target audience by increasing the output.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting. This particular example, the engagement is actually higher than the business above. You can see it's just slightly more skewed towards the 300 points of engagement versus this one. But I guess there's always that trade-off in marketing about velocity and volume, because we know that some teams fear that they don't want to post too often, or they don't want to be repeating the message. But actually, there is this trade-off where you need a certain level of volume to even have the chance of getting the eyeballs that you want on the stories that you're trying to tell. And I think that's something that I would highly urge anybody that's watching this and that's maybe thinking, well, we're producing content and we're posting twice a week already. We don't want to annoy our audience. Trust me, they won't even see it. And if they do and they start getting annoyed, it probably means your content's working. And I think sometimes we're a little bit too cautious in that approach.
Mm.
And I think you would certainly want to have a higher velocity of output, especially if you're seeing that level of engagement that this particular business is seeing.
One of the one of the benefits, sure, being in that higher velocity is every single time somebody in your audience, a partner, and maybe even your competitors open their computer, they see your business, they see your brand. And the net positive of that is that they are exposed to your message. They start to think of you a little bit more often. And when they experience the pain that your business solves for, you're absolutely one of the
Yeah,
brands in their mind. And that's why I've always
100%.
been a big champion for a little bit of volume because
Yeah,
we need to be present.
100%. Um, okay, what about the content treadmills? Because that's got a pretty interesting, I don't know, like connotation of what a content treadmill is. Like, how would you summarize this? What is going on for this orange business if you were to summarize it for the people
If I was
watching?
to give the really like negative outlook on it, I would say these are the businesses that are just turning out AI generated stuff, right? And they're just like not a great deal of thought. They're just like putting out stuff. That's the really negative one. The reality of it is that there is a really ambitious business here that's actually really concentrated on making sure that they utilize the opportunity they have to be posting probably almost every day on, or maybe, maybe once every 2 days on, say, LinkedIn, to really make sure they get some eyeballs on their business. The most important thing is here is that they are using this type of chart as a benchmark. And so,
Mm,
yes, they're scoring high on the content output, but we need to check back in and go, what was our total engagement over the last 90 days and the 90 days before that? And do you know what? We're moving further from the left to the right and we're improving. And that is
yeah.
a consequence of brand building. That is a consequence of getting better at the content and then, more articulate in the way that you tell your stories that land with the audience. For me, that's a really encouraging place to be right now because there's a
Yeah.
lot that we can work with and improve on. We've got the right muscle of posting. We just need to make those messages a little bit sharper and find ways to land them in front of the right people that are really going to benefit from the value that's contained within the message.
Yeah, 100%. I think if I was to give maybe a slightly uh, contradictory view of what you said, which is the assumption that there's a ton of AI content, that could be one. The other is that they're just putting out content that people don't really care that much about. And I think that's really where you start to get some great insight into like what is it that these businesses are doing over here that people are engaging like at a velocity of 5x what we're getting. And is it a particular type
Right.
of format? Is it a particular tactic? Because I would want to be obsessing over that because guess what? If you could have that same velocity of output, but have similar engagement that you have over here with these other competitors, oh my God, like you start to unlock a huge amount of reach and likely that then correlates with a huge amount of pipeline growth because you're moving these businesses that you're trying to drive engagement with further through the funnel faster because you're getting the eyeballs. And I think that's a really interesting one for this example of a business here. Is that
Yeah.
velocity is great, but out of these competitors, you're driving the lowest engagement. And the final thing I'd say in it is that if this was an early stage startup that was, as you said, maybe starting off, they were over here on the left, maybe 20 points of engagement, but every 90 days they're moving further and further over, they are crushing it because that just means that they probably didn't have the initial audience that these older perhaps businesses had, and they're just moving and outperforming and outproducing, which is super exciting.
And then
All right.
the quiet laggards find
I,
some help. Get some help. Look for somebody that's going to be able to help unlock both of these two axes for your business. Get some more velocity
yeah.
and also make sure the quality's following as well or leading.
Yeah, 100%. You don't wanna be underproducing content and also producing content like that. This is a bad place to be out of all. I think you don't wanna be down here.
Yeah.
James, can you give a quick view just so everybody understands why are these white lines here? What is this a summary of?
So this is the median. And so what we place on each one of these graphs is ultimately the median of the different businesses that are being analyzed in that particular moment. So they serve very well as competitor as part of a competitive analysis report. And so we place the axes as a median, so we can then demonstrate who are the ones that are leading in the space or from this collection of businesses, as opposed to just having fixed metrics. If we were to fix it, of course, that starts to then get bent all out of shape by things like businesses that are PLG and they've got hundreds of thousands of customers versus businesses that only need 100 accounts to be running at the 100 million ARR. So that really is so we can account for those variables between different categories, Stu.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with everyone. All right, let's give some quick fire examples. So we brought our own business in here. This was back from last year, and it's just to give everybody a kind of rapid view of how you could start to look at these graphs and give yourself a bit of a benchmark of where you are. Now, granted, these businesses are a lot larger than ours, and a lot, you know. Optimizely's been around for probably, I don't know, 15-ish years. AB Tasty, it's got to be similar dynamic yield as well. Um, and what you can see here is that AB Tasty is ultimately the highest performer. They've got the greatest amount of engagement per marketer, and they've also got the highest velocity of post per marketer. Orbital X is over here. We are driving a second highest volume of posts per marketer, but we really, compared to these businesses, need to get the engagement up as you start to compare against where these other companies are. And MasterCard Dynamic Yield, who were acquired by McDonald's and MasterCard, they are struggling in the sense of the engagement per marketer is low, but the actual post per marketer is very low. And it just gives you that snapshot of insight into what's going on that allows you to just go, right, that's where they are. How do we get over here? What are they doing differently? And the report ultimately allows you to see more of that.
Mm.
And then what we can do is bring in more examples. And I think this just gives you a bit of a snapshot into what the MPM report is ultimately able to do from a visualization standpoint, is we now have more competitors, we're able to see more of what's going on and start to make sure that we can understand what are the tactics that these businesses are deploying to ultimately have the greatest amount of post per marketer and also the greatest amount of engagement per marketer. And there's a range of companies there that you can see on the right hand side as part of that analysis. Now, it's obviously great to know engagement in posts, but I think one of the bits of insight that we find incredibly useful is to look at what are they actually doing. And this is a slightly different way to review it. So this is a spider diagram, and we've taken three examples here from Snowflake, Datadog, and Clay that you are probably familiar with if you are in the go-to-market or the RevOps team. Worth noting that Clay is a few years old, Snowflake and Datadog much older, larger businesses, and significantly larger or larger teams. But what the report and the analysis is able to do is it's able to go out and review all of the content that's being produced and then give you the snapshot on what are the tactics and campaigns that these businesses are deploying in order to get the highest MPM score. And I think what's super interesting here, out of everything that you can see, there's one tactic that only one business is utilizing, which is Clay is the only business that has a proactive strategy around humor. And some people look at humor and go, well, why would that be part of your marketing mix? And, something that I think is really interesting that we speak about is it's the B2Cification of B2B. And actually, if you think about B2C marketing, think about your favorite ever advert. Um, think about your favorite ever marketing campaign. I would assume that there's a high probability humor is part of it. And I think what's really interesting here is you've got this ultimately super fast growing business. I think they're Series C, raised hundreds of millions, but only a number of years old. But they've gone through absolute kind of hockey stick growth in the last 12 to 24 months. That has this intentional decision around humorous or fun content. What comes to mind, James, when you see that? Like, what does this suggest? That are they focusing on a particular part of the funnel? What are they trying to achieve with humor being clearly like a key component of
Yeah.
their tactics actually is higher in output than even their own partner strategy by about 4x.
Mm. Yeah, when you were talking there, Stuart, you might have seen like a little glint in my eye as you asked us to recall our favourite adverts from the past. And the first one that came to mind for me were those Nike adverts in the airport, LA, the three-a-side tournament on the ship. Were they funny? No. Did they make me smile? Every time. And it was that feeling of the smile and the enjoyment that it gave me to watch those adverts the 100 times that I did, maybe revisit them, that makes me still a huge customer of Nike even today.
Yeah,
And that feeling reemerges, right? You remember what entertains you, what gives you those dopamine hits. And this is what Clay is ultimately doing. They're trying to break the norm. They're being contrarian to what their consumers, their customers may be exposed to, and what this data really backs up so much of the time. And when it breaks that chain, when it breaks that normality, people stop scrolling. People
yeah,
focus in a little bit more on what it is that they're saying or what it is that they do. Now, this could be considered a risky strategy, but I would probably bet that these were the posts that yielded the most engagement. And when they
yeah.
yield the most engagement, it probably means they get the most eyeballs. And so, as a result of taking this risk, they're getting more new eyeballs on their brand than any of these other businesses without having to spend an ad dollar at all.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think it is worth just noting for those watching that we're not saying that Snowflake and Datadog are Clay's competitor. That's not the purpose of this. Is to show the difference in strategies and tactics being deployed. So I just wanted to make that point. The one that was really interesting for me was Snowflake and their leverage of video. Actually, if you go into Snowflake's LinkedIn, it's something like 80 to 90% of all of the content they're producing is video related. And it's either coming from their webinar strategies or some of their in-person events that they're recording.
Mm.
But it's clear that Snowflake, which is a big business doing incredible amounts of revenue, have really seen video as a absolutely key component to what they are ultimately producing. Um, and I think the bit for me that also stood out was Datadog's leverage of customer stories, like the highest performing in velocity compared to Snowflake and Clay, and just the number of customer based stories that they have in their content strategy, which again, super interesting. If you look at the amount that they're investing there, even over things like partners, which have historically always been super important to businesses like Datadog.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I just love how simple it is to like see this and be able to go, right, well, we're not actually investing here. Does that mean that our competitors know more than us? Should we start investing here? Or actually, do we want to do something a little bit contrarian, as you mentioned, James, to push these particular tactics and campaigns forward?
I think the bit I love the most about this aspect of the marketing per marketer report, Stuart, is it doesn't give us all the answers, but it tells us where to look first. It tells us where to go and take that next step in competitive analysis and say, hey, is there something here that we should also be doing? Or is there something that we can actually do in a different way that is going to make it stand out from the rest of the players in our category?
100%. Yeah. And to that point of going a little bit deeper, the report is really robust. The way that the measurement is calculated, it does allow us to start digging into things like visits on websites, to things like active channels, and really allow us to get a really detailed insight into some of the tactics being deployed, the particular impact it's having on the website, and therefore a prediction on what the conversion impact actually is, so that you actually leave that analysis with a really good view of what is going on with your competitors and allow you to start putting some goals and some focuses on what you're doing as a company in order to win more market share, which is ultimately, the kind of key thing with all of this type of analysis is that the reason you want to understand is so that you can maybe refocus, think about new channels, think about new tactics to win more market share and ultimately dominate your market, because there is a high probability that team size will continue to be reduced, and therefore the the default and the assumption is that we'll just use AI to produce more content because that's something that's important to the business. But actually, if it comes at the cost of quality, you've got a major issue in the fact that you're just producing and contributing to the AI slop that a lot of businesses unfortunately are already utilizing in their tactics. And this is just scratching the surface on it. And I hope everybody's found it incredibly useful to just understand what's possible. As I said, this is done by a team of analysts and a team of research agents that we've built to allow us to go out and build this insight that is produced far quicker than whatever was possible before. And for everybody that is on this call, you'll see an opportunity now to put in your details where you will receive your own MPM report. And that will be completely branded, it will look amazing, and you can select 3 competitors that you want analyzed as part of that. That might be disruptors, businesses that are earlier than you in their stage that you're a little bit worried about. It might be the businesses that you're trying to take market share from. But if you fill in this form now, we will work on that and we'll get that to you. And we're actually offering complimentary 30-minute sessions with myself, James, our other co-founder, Josh, so that we can actually talk you through it to then give you our perspective and understanding because we've done this hundreds and hundreds of times. James, anything finally you want to share with those that are listening? What was your key takeaway from the conversation today?
So many takeaways, Stu. My final thought was around that slide that you had up a moment ago, which really sort of added an additional layer to the analysis that we've walked through so far, which was looking at visits, which was looking at traffic. And when we really are carrying out that competitive analysis against your close competitors, it also starts to give us some insight to how much opportunity is out there. How much mind share can we start to yield as a result of improving these metrics through the chart? I think what also comes through in the report is some channel analysis of understanding whether your competitors are driving traffic from social, from paid, through organic.
Yeah.
And it's with that additional information that everything really starts to come together. And so, look, I think the big takeaway for me today was just being given the opportunity to talk about it in full, out loud, like we have. And I'm really excited to run through some of these reports that we've seen come through as requests, but also get some other marketers' thoughts and feedback and see where we could also add potentially some data points to give even more clarity, or where we can explain some of the data points in a bit more clarity to make it make sense to not just marketers, but also our colleagues at the boardroom level as well. Because I think this
Yeah.
type of benchmark is what can give them the encouragement that this business is doing more with less and we're taking it very seriously and we're successfully doing it.
Yeah, love it. Well, look, thank you everybody so much for joining. We'll be in touch and really appreciate your time and look forward to speaking in due course. So thank you everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.